reaction to the president's trial. Tonight, believes Republicans want to draw a line between the two visions for America. I'm Chad Groening.
A Kansas judge is under fire for labeling two teen girls as partly to blame in the case against a man now being sent to prison for soliciting sex from them. Eben Brown reports.
67-year-old Raymond Soden has a previous record of sex crimes, and that's why prosecutors in Leavenworth County, Kansas, wanted Judge Michael Gibbons to sentence him to 13 years for going online to find two girls ages 13 and 14 and paying to have sex with them. But the judge shocked the courtroom with a lesser term of 6 years, saying the two teen girls were aggressors in the situation, voluntarily going to Soden's home. Prosecutors are considering appealing the judge's order. Eben Brown, Fox News.
Virginia Lieutenant Governor Justin Fairfax is involved in his own scandal over a sexual assault allegation that could leave the state's future leadership in question, should Governor Ralph Northam resign after the release of a photo from his 1984 yearbook showing one person in blackface paint and another in a KKK hood. Garrett Tenney reports from Richmond.
In the era of Me Too, the allegation is causing a lot of concern among his Democratic colleagues here in the Virginia State Legislature. The Legislative Black Caucus, which has strongly endorsed him to replace Northam as governor, is now backtracking a bit as well. They released a statement last night saying the Virginia Legislative Black Caucus takes all allegations of sexual assault or misconduct with the utmost seriousness. Given the recent allegations regarding Lieutenant Governor Justin Fairfax, the VLBC will continue to assess this developing situation as more details become available. Now again, while Fairfax flat out denies the allegations, if Governor Northam decides to step down and if Fairfax is not able to replace him, third in line would be the state's Attorney General, Mark Herring, who is also a Democrat.
And finally, another company recalls dog food.
Hill's Nutrition is voluntarily recalling more than 20 of its canned dog food products for elevated levels of vitamin D, which it blames on a supplier error. Hill's, which specializes in prescription and specialty foods, said in a statement on its website that it learned of the problem after a complaint. In December, the Food and Drug Administration warned that at least 8 dog food brands could have the problem. Toxic levels of vitamin D can cause kidney failure and death in dogs. Carmen Roberts, Fox News.
American Family News is online at onenewsnow.com. I'm Rusty Pugh.
Pastor Joseph Parker.
You know, obviously when things are going well, it's much easier to have an attitude of thanksgiving and praise to the Lord. But even when things are going difficult, it's important to know, too, there's never a time it's inappropriate for us to thank and praise God. Now, some may ask, well, what about when you're going through difficult times, when you're walking through the valley of the shadow of death? We can have two different responses. We can worship or we can whine.
Tune in to the Hour of Intercession, weekday afternoons at 1 Central on Urban Family Talk. She's sharp, pointed, and insightful. This is Stacy on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
We provided Russia an ample window of time to mend its ways and for Russia to honor its commitment. Russia has refused to take any steps to return real and verifiable compliance over these 60 days. The United States will therefore suspend its obligations under the INF Treaty.
The White House says State of the Union address will be one that focuses on unity and bipartisanship. But the president on Friday did not sound like he wants to extend an olive branch to House Speaker Nancy Pelosi.
Well, he certainly will address the border wall, but also national security and border security, immigration overall. This is an address to the nation, but he's in the chamber in front of the Congress that has failed to do its job for any number of years, if not decades, on getting us an immigration plan in this country that, of course, secures our southern border.
And now, Stacey Washington.
Yeah, and now here I am. I'm back again, and I'm so excited to be back after our interview yesterday with Governor Huckabee. We have another fantastic guest on for you today. It is Corey Lewandowski. He was the campaign manager for the Trump campaign and is now an author and political analyst, and he's going to join us and talk about the State of the Union, which is incoming. Gird your loins. Also, not to be outdone, Maxine Waters is begging Americans not to watch. Now, we all suspected openly here on the show that there may be a reason why people would possibly not want Democrats, not want Republicans to have the State of the Union. people on the left don't want the president addressing the nation from the well of Congress, talking about the problems at the southern border and touting his accomplishments for the year. That records jobs numbers from last Friday, blasting through expectations. It's kind of phenomenal. And so he's going to be talking about that too. So today on the show, we are going to be talking about God answering prayer and why we have to keep on praying and asking. The Democrats actually had one of theirs vote to basically leave some states the availability of having infanticide on the books as a viable option for terminating a baby. Notice I didn't say pregnancy, I said a baby. And that's a baby on both sides of the womb. But for the semantics that we're currently engaging in, thanks to the Supreme Court and Democrats, we have to delineate whether or not a baby is born. An unborn baby gets to be killed. A baby that's been born, well, you know, it's supposed to have the same rights. That little human being is supposed to have the same rights as you or I, the right not to be murdered, the right not to be left to die, the right not to be treated like a piece of property. So we're going to be working through that and looking at what we can do to, we have to pray about that. We have to keep our minds really clear and focused on praying about the things that are facing our country. And we're also going to talk about the extreme week that the Democrats had last week. And it's one of those subjects, if you're a regular listener to the show, you know we often talk about abortion as it weaves its way in and out of the news because there are always laws, lawsuits, regulations, etc., always things happening for that subject matter. But for Americans who don't listen to conservative radio, they don't listen to Christian radio, or we're really the leaders on Christian talk radio in just unpacking and keep people informed on the abortion issue. And so when we look at this, when we're talking about this, and I just want to tell my producer, we are not live streaming. We do not have live stream over on the Facebook page, which probably not on the YouTube either. So when we're talking about this and we're getting into the details of what exactly is happening here and what some Democrats are advocating for, and I understand it's not all Democrats. Every Democrat in America has not suddenly just woken up and said, yeah, infanticide, that's a thing, we should allow that. But people in leadership are saying it. People in positions of power are saying it. Governor Northam, he's still in power in Virginia. He's still hanging on. He's hoping if he just hangs on long enough, he can, you know, it'll go away. Let's let this die down. That's what he's hoping for. It's not going to die down. At least I hope it's not. I hope people aren't going to give up on the idea that we need to not have anyone who's in leadership saying that infanticide is a thing. So we're going to talk about that extreme week for the Democrats, and we'll take your calls. 866-963-2037. Okay, so we have YouTube. We do not have Facebook. So I'm just checking in there. So you can call into the show, 866-963-2037, 866-963-2037. So remember, we've been talking about our goals for our partnership with India Partners. And I want you guys to hear something. This is really, it's heart-wrenching, but it's good because we're partnering for a reason, and I want you to hear it directly from the mouths of one of the survivors. It's a 7-year-old girl, and she's actually talking about her experience. I'd love to call up SPG 3037 for India Partners. Oh, okay. So, okay. We do not have access to these because of we have something going on with audio today and I forgot about that. So you won't be able to hear that today, but we'll play that audio for you tomorrow. In short, what we're asking you to do is to fund a day of safety for one of these children in Mumbai, India. You can go to afr.net and do that. That's my favorite way of getting the things done when we're partnering with ministries to get donations done. When you go to afr.net, you'll find India Partners is right there at the top slider. You just click it, takes you right through, and in less than 60 seconds, your donation is processed and you're off on your merry way to do something else. We're asking for $7.08. That's 2 cups of regular coffee or 1 cup of fancy coffee for you to partner with us to save just one day of safety. So 1 day of safety for a child who's currently being rescued from sexual slavery in Mumbai, India, in their red light district. So we're partnering with them, and we're so happy to have you on board. And we have already had so many people call in and really partner with us on this, and so we're asking you to do the same. So now I want to get to, I talked about God answering prayer. And so I talked a little bit about this on the show also a couple days ago, maybe it was the end of last week, where I was talking about our son having the negative medical diagnosis and how God has answered our prayers in us having a treatment plan for him, and he's feeling so much better. And I didn't go into a ton of details. He's a teenager. I'm sure he doesn't want me to share too much, but I want to encourage someone who's listening to the show today and thinking, you know, you're in the middle of something going on with your health or something going on with work or whatever the situation is, and you're super discouraged and you're feeling like, you know, I've prayed about this and I'm seeing nothing. Because I know there were some moments in December when, honestly, I was so frustrated with the process, with dealing with some of the people. You know how you have to deal with everyone in a medical office. And usually it's the medical people, the workers in the office are fantastic and the doctor's not so great, or the doctor is fantastic and the people in the office aren't so great. And so this has been the case many times before. And, it's not my first rodeo, but I was feeling super discouraged about the slowness and the ineptitude that I was seeing, and people calling me and say, we have this result. And then, then you call them back and they're like, well, yeah, we don't, or it's the same as last time. A lot of it seemed really discombobulated. And I remember at one point getting so angry and really, let's be real here, losing my temper and kind of being very direct about what I was looking to see next and making a whole bunch of phone calls. Sometimes you have to get out of your regular zone and do the legwork yourself. And in doing that, I was able to spur some movement on, and we got to the next stage, which then opened the door for him to be feeling a lot better. But during all of that, I kept praying. So it wasn't that I lost my temper and I was just, off in a corner kicking rocks or puppies. I was praying through it. Not to say that I do that every single time. Unfortunately, I don't. My first answer is not to pray every single time. I want it to be. One day, hopefully it will be. I'm working on that. But I want to encourage you, if you're in that frustrating moment or you're wondering, is God hearing these prayers? Because in the natural, this looks like horrible. This looks untenable. Don't fear. He is hearing your prayers. He is answering your prayers. And it doesn't always look the way we want it to look, but he's answering them. So I want to give you a couple of scriptures. So Luke 11:9 says, so I say to you, ask and it will be given to you. Seek and you will find. Knock and it will be open to you. Again, in Matthew 7:7, same exact sentiment. Ask and it will be given to you. Seek and you will find. Knock and it will be open to you. John 16:24 says, until now you have asked for nothing in my name. Ask and you will receive, so that your joy may be made full. So, second answered prayer about another kid at our house. I've been praying for a very specific outcome, and God totally answered my prayers last night, to the point where, let's be real here. I was sitting at the center island with my little cup of hot tea and my laptop, and I got a text message from one of our kids, and I broke out crying. And I just had to thank God in that moment, because I knew that my prayer was literally answered. He heard me. And so I prayed for, 3.5 months. It might be longer than that. I'd have to go back in my little prayer journal and take a look and see if I even wrote it down. But he answered it. So I have other prayers that I've prayed that I have heard nor hide nor hair. So I'm in the waiting zone. But I want you to be encouraged and to know that God is for you. He answers prayer, and he's absolutely right now in this moment doing what needs to be done on your behalf. You just have to keep praying and walk it out. So be encouraged. We have some time left in this segment, and I have some audio from President Trump, but I want to get to the phones. David in Georgia, hey, thanks for calling the show today.
Thank you for taking my call.
Sure.
Not a long-time listener, but I enjoy listening to you. I like your point of views.
Thank you for listening.
Was wondering if these people are thinking about it, talking about infanticide. What's if it was to be passed, if they were to start doing this, what's to keep, just say, Cuomo's mother from saying, hey, I made a mistake all those years ago. He's my son. I want to take him out. I know it's not an infant, but same principle. It's still a human being. What does it matter what the age? He still came out of her womb. She still has, if they're saying she has the right to kill him after he comes out, then what's time got to do with it?
You know, it's a good question. To be honest with you, David, I don't think people really are following this thing through to its natural conclusion. And you're making a point that I think a lot of us are, like a lot of people, I won't say us, but a lot of people are making this point in different ways. But the end point that David is making and that so many others have made is once you get on this side of the womb and you're able to say, you know what, I've changed my mind, I don't want to have this baby, or leave that baby there to die, then what's to say you can't say at 2 years old, you know, this child isn't working out the way I thought they would, I'm going to go ahead and just let it die. You know, where does it stop? And for most people, they're horrified and they refuse to believe that this is where it goes. But if you look back in the Bible, when people were routinely sacrificing babies to idols, they were sacrificing babies. They were also sacrificing kids. You see what I'm saying? It was child sacrifice. There was no delineation, oh, this baby is, you know, this many months old. And that's why it's so ludicrous that we say you can have an abortion when a baby is 24 weeks, but you can't have one when it's, 40 weeks. And that's why they're pushing for this, because it doesn't make any sense. If it's a baby at, 7 months of gestational age and you're in the hospital and your doctor is having surgery on the baby while it's in your womb to save its life or to correct something that's gone wrong or to save your life and the life of the baby, then how is it that that's not a viable human being? Why would insurance cover operations on something that's not viable, that's not valuable, that doesn't have worth? Insurance companies spend multiple hundreds of millions of dollars a year on operating on babies and prenatal care, all of that stuff, so that people can carry their baby to full term. A woman can carry the baby to full term and have it. It doesn't make any sense. We'll be back with more. I heard the music. I'm not sure how close we are to the break here, but we're going to have Corey Lewandowski coming up next. He's going to give us some preview on the State of the Union and more on Stacy on the Right. Go to urbanfamilytalk.com, afr.net to find out more about what we're doing. And to check in with us, go to stacyontheright.com and hit the subscribe button. And if you're not doing the newsletter, I'm doing a little blast now. I did the interview from Governor Huckabee yesterday, and that was in an email blast to people who've subscribed to the blog. And if you've subscribed, please open up those emails. They're super short, and they usually have fun information in there for you to check on. We'll be back with more right after this.
Hello, I'm Tim Wildman, president of American Family Association and American Family Radio. You know, on our Spiritual Heritage Tour of Washington, D.C., we go to the Supreme Court. That's one of the places we go on day one, and we visit the inside chambers. We go to where the justices sit, and it's an amazing place to visit, the Supreme Court of the United States. We don't just look at the outside, we go to the inside and see where the justices sit and where oral arguments are heard. So that's just one of the places we visit on one of the days. We're in Washington, D.C., and we also go to Mount Vernon, the home of George and Martha Washington. So we're going in June, we're going in September. June's almost full. September will be filling up soon. If you want more information on this Spiritual Heritage Tour, go to spiritualheritagetours.com. That's spiritualheritagetours.com.
Hi, I'm Crawford Loritz with a legacy moment. My dear old tough dad was a real soft touch when it came to my sisters. Often they would get out of hot water, even get what they wanted, by kind of sweet-talking the old guy. They'd rub the bald spot on his head and say nice things and tell him how great a dad he was. Well, he knew he was being had, but it worked. It used to floor me, too, because Dad was no pushover. Flattery has always been a very powerful tool to manipulate people, and Christians aren't immune to it. There's a very subtle, insidious thing that can happen, especially to those of us who are concerned about impacting an unbelieving world. We need to be careful about being driven by audience response. In our desire to be liked and accepted, we can't allow where unbelievers are to determine the content or truth that we give them. There's a telling passage in Acts chapter 14. God used the Apostle Paul to perform an incredible miracle, and the people responded with a wonderful compliment. Verse 12, Barnabas they called Zeus, and Paul Hermes, because he was the chief speaker. Talk about flattery. Now listen to verses 14 and 15. But when the apostles Barnabas and Paul heard of it, they tore their garments and rushed out into the crowd, crying out, Men, why are you doing these things? We also are men of like nature with you, and we bring you good news that you should turn from these vain things to a living God. See, they refused to let their compliments, their nice statements, take them away from the integrity of the gospel they were preaching. Here's what I want you to remember today. It's wonderful to have nice things said about us, but at what cost? We must always maintain the integrity and purity of our message without compromise.
Join Crawford Loritz tomorrow for another Legacy Moment.
Welcome back to Stacy on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Welcome back to the program. Thank you for being with us today. Go to StacyOnTheRight.com and hit the subscribe button. And we are so excited about having our next guest. He's been on the program before. Awesome author, and he does political analysis. And really, we're so happy to have him come on today and give us his State of the Union items. So we have Corey Lewandowski, former Trump campaign manager and author of Trump's Enemies, How the Deep State is Undermining the Presidency. Hey, Corey, how's it going?
I'm doing great. How are you today?
You know, the sun's not out. I'm in the Midwest. I'm in Missouri. But it's 32 degrees, and after negative 24 last week, I'm just learning to count my blessings. I did not button my jacket. I didn't wear gloves. I just act like a normal person, and I went out, and I'm back. I'm going to live.
Well, what the president is going to talk about tonight is how he solved the ability of global warming in the last 2 years because it was so cold where you are with that deep freeze. It's one of the many things that he got done over the last 2 years he doesn't get credit for, right? We had it below in your area.
I'm with you. Whatever he's going to say, we know Maxine Waters doesn't want him to say it because she's begging Americans not to watch.
It's amazing. Look, our country is better today than it was 2 years ago. We're stronger. We're more prosperous. We're more well-respected on the national stage. And to have a senior member of Congress say not to watch the president give a State of the Union address that is going to update the American people of all our successes just goes to show you how partisan and how broken Washington, D.C. is. And this president's done everything he can to reach across the partisan divide, to say let's solve problems together. And the Democrats, some are going to boycott the speech tonight, and others are going to encourage people not to watch it. And really, the American people don't win when that happens.
No, and so, I mean, I think most people will hear that Maxine Waters doesn't want them to watch, but it's like saying, don't watch something that could possibly be a train wreck. I think a lot of liberals feel like the president's going to fall on his face tonight. Now, you and I know he's prepared for this speech. He was born for this storm, and he's ready to tackle this issue. In fact, he's really been trying to no avail to negotiate with people who don't want to see him solve this issue. But there's more than that. There's a huge number of jobs that have been created in the past year. If we just talk about the past year for the president and we look at what's happened to the American people, as you point out, it's been largely successful for him. He's gotten a bump in the polls, too. He's back up at 48%.
Well, that's right. And look, I was with the president yesterday at the White House. I had a briefing to preview the State of the Union. There was a small group of us that went there. We heard directly from the president, directly from the vice president, 5.2 million new jobs created in the first 2 years, 600,000 manufacturing jobs, okay? The lowest unemployment for African Americans and Hispanic Americans in the history of our country. More Americans working today than ever. And people should be proud of that. We're creating wealth again. Our economy is growing. Renegotiating bad trade deals because we've been taken advantage of for too long brings those manufacturing jobs back. when I lived in the Midwest. You know how it is there, right? They are the backbone of our country. We have to make sure that we have a steel industry and a coal industry and industries that are producing things, because God forbid anything bad happen, we can't rely on China to take care of us. And that's what this president has done in these last 2 years, is bring those jobs back that Barack Obama said couldn't be done.
So let's dig in a little bit here on the actual the big issue is the border. And I know you've seen there's a couple of different proposals, ideas floating around. One is obviously brought up by the president numerous times, national emergency declaration. But that one will tie the entire issue up in the courts because, of course, the Democrats have already got their briefs ready. They're ready to file and tie it up and put it to the Ninth Circuit and get a national injunction, et cetera. We know their routine. But there's also the ability to declare the cartels, the drug cartels, declare them terrorist organizations, and then he's able to use a whole bevy of options that don't need congressional approval. Do you think the president might be pondering that as well, that other option?
Well, I can tell you this. The issue on our southern border is a humanitarian crisis, is a crisis of epic proportions. It's a national security issue. And this president was clear on the campaign trail, and now as the president of the United States, that he will do anything it takes to protect American people from people coming in illegally. And look, the flow of fentanyl into our country through the southern border, 90% of it is coming in there. We know that for sure. We know that people are crossing back and forth from the border almost at free will. They're committing crimes in the United States. This president has said, you don't want to call it a wall, you want to call it a barrier, a blockade, I don't care what you call it, it's going to protect Americans. He's going to do that. And that means every potential use of his power. And he has been very, very cautious of not declaring this presidential emergency, which has been used 52 different occasions since Jimmy Carter, 17 by Bill Clinton alone, 6 of which are still in effect today. This president hasn't done that because he's tried to negotiate with the Democrats. He's tried to reach out and said, what is it you want to give me the money we need to protect our country? And he's come up with an obstinate Nancy Pelosi who said she's willing to give $1 for border security. You go back and ask Officer Singh if $1 is enough for his life. On Friday, Dave Bossie and I were in Michigan, and we saw the Terry family, whose brother was a Border Patrol agent who was killed in the line of duty. And you ask them, do walls work? Would you like to see our border secure? And they say, you bet on it, and we'd do anything to have our family member back. Nancy Pelosi's disgusting notion of $1 is shameful to every man and woman who's been killed in this country or the victim of a crime for people who are in this country illegally, and the president's going to stop it.
All right. I'm glad that the resolve that he shared with you all in the State of the Union preview, that's very heartening. I'm excited about hearing him tonight. There's another issue that was just recently. We had Secretary Pompeo coming out and talking about the U.S. arms treaty we have with Russia. It's an intermediate range nuclear forces treaty, and we've just recently pulled out of it. And the announcement was made, of course, the same old tired, refrain of wails and gnashing of teeth from Democrats and people like that. But in reading about it, Corey, I really felt like, this is overdue. I can't believe that Barack Obama, with his warmongering self, that he didn't do it. Do you see him talking about this tonight as well?
Well, the president's speech tonight is going to be probably 40% on foreign policy because we've had some significant successes around the globe. But what the president is also going to say is when he came into office, our partners, our friends, our allies around the world weren't paying their fair share to NAFTA. To NATO. They're now paying that. It's $100 billion of new revenue that they have paid that we don't have to pay. That's number one. Number two, the United States cannot be the police force of the world. He's going to talk about our troop drawdown in Afghanistan, in Syria, in Iraq. And what's amazing to me now is that the Democratic Party is chastising this president for trying to bring our men and women home from being in harm's way that no longer have a strategic value to us. That's not to say we don't keep a quick reactionary force there and use our special forces when necessary, but to, by and large, bring our men and women back to our soil where they belong should be applauded. And now the Democrats are the parties of the warmongers, if you can believe this. And the president's going to point out that hypocrisy tonight, and he's going to fulfill the campaign pledge, which he said is to end the war in Afghanistan that we've been fighting for 17 years. It's time to bring our men and women home.
So there's a lot of Americans on both sides of the political aisle who are going to be supercharged to hear that. And I know that conventional wisdom is that we can't ever pull out of a war. You know, once we start in a conflict, we got to stay there forever. We can't ever pull out. And I get it. And I've heard from the experts, and we've interviewed a lot of people on the show who've explained, you know, the thought process behind that. But nothing is more real than Americans who have family members who are serving overseas, and they don't see an end to being there. They don't see a point to being there other than us spilling our blood and treasure and trillions of American taxpayer dollars over there. So I think people are really going to be excited to hear him reiterate those. They're things that he promised on the campaign trail, right?
Well, they are. And look, it's very important, not only the trillions of American dollars that we spent over there, the thousands of American lives, the tens of thousands of soldiers maimed over there, but, you know, here's the other thing. Just because the intelligence community doesn't say we should do it doesn't mean they're always right. You know, let me go back to the weapons of mass destruction that the intelligence community was 100% sure was there when Colin Powell went and said that to the UN, only to find out that they weren't. This president is a man who does not take for granted whatever they say. He challenges their assertions. He questions why we have to continue to be in Iraq and Afghanistan and Syria. He says, why do we need deployments that long? What are we getting out of 17 years in a foreign conflict? I don't understand. Explain it to me. And the generals can't stand it because they're used to doing things a certain way. 30 years of Washington dogma has saddled them with more money, more troops, more pain for Americans over there. This president says enough is enough, and it's time to bring our men and women who serve in our uniforms home.
I agree. So I'm also seeing from Bloomberg, they've just sent out this huge, it's a story, and it's being featured on Twitter. And if you're just tuning into the show, we are enjoying hearing he's basically coming straight hot out of the White House with a pre-State of the Union briefing with the President of the United States, a very small group of people. And he's taken some time out, Corey Lewandowski, to join the show today to kind of give us a preview of what's happening tonight. I know if you guys are like me, I've already bought my brie and my little special 3 kinds of crackers and some candied walnuts. I'm going to arrange those onto a tiny tray, and I'm taking those as my bringing in, you know, for the hostess who's hosting us tonight, because we're watching the State of the Union at a State of the Union watch party at someone's house. And so if you're like me, you're waiting for this thing tonight. So Corey's here today talking to us about that. Bloomberg is reporting that President Trump will not declare a national emergency in the State of the Union tonight. I kind of think that's wise. How do you feel about like the whole national emergency declaration?
Well, look, I'll tell you, you know, Dave and I have this great podcast. It's called From Deep in the Swamp. We talk about what we heard coming out of the White House, and we talk specifically about this issue of the national emergency. And while it has been used on 52 occasions since Jimmy Carter, every president since Carter has declared national emergencies on things. Bill Clinton declared 17 of them, 6 of which are still in effect today, 20 years after his administration has ended. Nobody ever gave it a blank until this president wants to do it. Now, I think this is not the right venue for this. I think the president should be conciliatory. He should be forward-facing. He should be visionary. He should do what Ronald Reagan did and say, the best days of America are in front of us, and that's what he's going to do. This is not a speech for political rhetoric or to declare that national emergency, but what it is an opportunity for the president to do is to outline the reason, if he needs to do it, why that is, which is the crime and the drugs coming across the border, the human smuggling, the humanitarian crisis which we have on our southern border, the national security emergency we have there. This is an opportunity to outline for the American people how serious that issue is, to ask the Democrats to join with him to build that wall and to give them another opportunity before the February 15th deadline comes, where they have to close the government again because the Democrats had not negotiated in good faith. So I don't think he's going to declare the national emergency tonight, but he's going to lay out the case of, if he needs to, why he will do it.
I'm loving this. So I first want to give, could you tell people where they can find the podcast? Because I didn't know you and Dave were doing one.
Well, look, I'll tell you, it's so exciting because this is almost our very first podcast. But because it's the State of the Union, right, we wanted to do it. It's a preview. You know, if you go to Apple and iPod Play, iPlay, and, you know, every basic podcast place you can go to, you can go and download it. It's free of course. Okay. It's called From Deep in the Swamp. And Dave and I do about 35 minutes today coming out of the White House, talking about our conversation with the president, talking about what's going to be in the preview to the State of the Union speech. And look, it's an exciting thing, and it's really important for the American people to understand where the president is coming from. He is fully locked in to knowing how big this speech is for him. So he's going to talk about safe and legal immigration. He's going to talk about protecting American workers. He's going to talk about the rebuilding of America, an infrastructure protection project. He's going to talk about the cost of health care, the ability to get drugs legally, cheaper, generics, speed up the FDA process so people can have the best health care in the world. And he's going to talk about Americans' national security and the fights that we have engaged in around the world. The big theme coming into the State of the Union tonight is going to be called Choosing Greatness. And let me just give you one line from the speech that I've had the privilege of having it.
Oh, wow.
The president's going to say, together, we can break decades of political stalemate. We can bridge old divisions, heal old wounds, build new coalitions, forge new solutions, and unlock the extraordinary promise of America's future. The decision is ours to make. This is a speech that is uplifting. It is exciting. It's visionary. And it's going to last about an hour long. And I'll tell you, your listeners, the viewers are going to be in for a special, special night tonight.
Well, you know what? We have already had a preview of the special night and a little bit of, like, I'd say a jolt of Lewandowski specialness right here on the show. I want to say thanks, Corey, for joining in today and for giving us the preview, especially a line from the speech. I know you're busy, and we appreciate your time today.
Well, thank you. It's always my pleasure. I hope to be back soon.
All right. Talk to you again soon, Corey. That's Corey Lewandowski, former Trump campaign manager, author of Trump's Enemies, How the Deep State is Undermining the Presidency. And I think it's so cool that he got to go in and get a little preview at the White House. And so, you know, we got to get on that cool list. But I guess the only way to do it is to be like a former campaign manager or someone who worked on the campaign. Awesome that we have access to him and that he's great. He just comes on the show, which is fantastic. So I don't know if we still have people who held on and we just have a minute left. What we'll do is, if you're holding on, please stick there for me. We're going to take calls in the third segment. I have less than 30 seconds off here right now. And I want to say thank you so much for actually calling into the show. And if you've emailed, and if I haven't responded to you, it's not intentional. I've been going through and responding to emails from people who've emailed. And so I'm so appreciative of people who reach out to me and send encouragement. People have been so kind in email. Thank you so much for that. And also, I want to mention that we have this fantastic conference coming up later in the year, the Marriage and Family Conference, the same one we did last year. So I would encourage you to definitely go to urbanfamilytalk.com and check that out. The Marriage and Family Conference will be held in Tupelo again, and we're going to be so excited to have you there. So guess what? That's music. We'll have the third segment with your calls right after this, 866-963-2037. Be right back.
What does it take to live an uncommon life? Here's former Super Bowl winning coach Tony Dungy with today's uncommon moment.
My wife Lauren started an annual tradition with our family and friends who gather at our home during Thanksgiving. She asked us all to select a scripture verse and share something that we're thankful for. My verse was Philippians 1:3. Every time I think of you, I give thanks to my God. Thanksgiving is a time of reflection upon the past and a reminder that God has again been ever so faithful. The simple things of life are brought into clear focus. Giving thanks has a way of blocking out the selfishness and focusing on a spirit of gratitude, love, and joy. Today, why not give thanks to God for all that He's provided?
New York Times best-selling author Tony Dungy, author of the popular Uncommon book series. Discover more at CoachDungy.com. That's CoachDungy.com.
There are many ways you can listen to the shows of Urban Family Talk. One of those ways is through our very own app. Whether you have an iPhone or an Android, just go to the App Store and search for Urban Family Talk. You'll have immediate access to 24-hour programming as well as the podcast for each show. You'll be able to tune in no matter where you are. Speaking of tuning in, we have our own channel on another radio app called TuneIn. Cool, right? Urban Family Talk is everywhere. Just download the app and take us wherever you go.
There has not yet been made the correlation between our social starvation and the spiritual departure from God.
Dr. Tony Evans says we poison the pot when we add worldly ingredients to the Lord's recipe.
And until the cause is addressed, the cure cannot be experienced.
Uncovering the problems and solutions related to race, culture, and Christ. This week on The Alternative with Dr. Tony Evans.
Securing America.
The nation's war on opioid addiction is playing out on the southern border and in the courts. The Drug Enforcement Agency says it seized more than 50 million pounds of illicit drugs at the border over the past 2 years. Vice President Mike Pence.
90% of heroin that claims 300 lives every single week in overdoses across this country comes through our southern border.
Speaking at the DEA, the vice president again called for tighter border security to help stop the flow of illegal drugs.
We hear the tragic stories every day in every community of this country of drug abuse, addiction, overdose.
Meanwhile, Insist Therapeutics and its founder, John Kapoor, are on trial in Boston in an alleged kickback scheme to persuade doctors to prescribe an addictive fentanyl spray. In Washington, Rachel Sutherland, Fox News.
Welcome back to Stacy on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Where it's obvious that a woman is about to give birth, would that still be a point at which she could request an abortion if she was so certified?
My bill would allow that, yes.
The infant would be delivered, the infant would be kept comfortable, and then a discussion would ensue between the physicians and the mother.
So for people out there who like their insurance, well, they don't get to keep it?
Let's eliminate all of that. Let's move on.
We see Israel institute law that recognizes it as a Jewish state, and we still uphold it as a democracy in the Middle East. I almost chuckled.
Capitalism without rules is theft. So what I believe is capitalism with serious rules.
I do think a system that allows billionaires to exist when there are parts of Alabama where people are still getting ringworm because they don't have access to public health is wrong.
The world is going to end in 12 years if we don't address climate change.
Help elect Trump, you egotistical billionaire.
So that is a little mashup by the award-winning Washington Free Beacon of the extreme comments made just last week by Democrats. This is not a mashup of comments from olden days or months and months ago. This is just a week's worth of their comments, ranging on subjects like abortion, Israel as a democratic state as opposed to comparisons of Israel to Iran, and all of the other things that you just heard there. Crazy pants, pants on fire crazy, hair on fire crazy, crazier than a bag of cats crazy. That's what we've heard from the Democrats just last week. Let's go to the phones. We have Connie in Texas. Hey, Connie, thanks for calling into the show today.
Oh, thank you, Stacy. Thank you for everything you do and the boldness and just you tell it like it is.
Thanks.
And thank you so much. My comment is simply that on this abortion issue where they talk about the baby is delivered and then the doctor and the mother, decide what they to do. Mm-hmm. Well, when a baby's in the womb, they call it abortion, but I believe that if the baby's outside the womb and laying somewhere to be made comfortable, I would consider that murder. Mm-hmm. And why can't they just say it like that? Because that's what it's not an abortion, it's murder. This child has been delivered. It's murder. I mean, and
it is.
It's a shame, and it's murder.
I'm with you. I mean, it's chilling. I part of last week I was so shell-shocked that Democrats were openly supporting this. And I'm telling you, Connie, I understand the depravity of, supporting abortion. I used to be someone who, I don't recommend it and I don't think it should be done a lot, but some people have the right to do that. And I was, I was in my 20s, I didn't know much. And I really felt like, I'm a Democrat and that's what they're advocating for. But it's different when you see someone like Governor Northam, who is he's actually a doctor, a neurologist, and he's an older man with children. I don't know if he has grandchildren. I haven't looked up his Wikipedia, but I know he has, he's a family person. And I'm really surprised that other people who do have kids, some of them, you have people with pregnant women in their families advocating for this. It's upsetting. And I heard the emotion in your voice, and I felt the same way. I feel like it's some kind of like horrible, like you're in a nightmare, and then you think to yourself in the nightmare, I need to wake up, but then you don't. And so you're still in the nightmare for a while. The trick is, if you're having a nightmare, is to say, this isn't real. I want to wake up. But you have to realize you're in a nightmare first. It's like we're in a nightmare and we're yelling, I want to wake up. And every day we just get up. It's the same old, Americans advocating for killing babies after they're born. I mean, we're talking about, the last time we saw a baby together, my husband and I were at the doctor with our son, and we were in the pediatric wing of the hospital. And so in the testing area, they have all ages of kids in there getting blood work drawn. And this guy comes in with this adorable little baby in one of those pumpkin seats. And I just glanced over, and before I knew it, I was just staring at the baby. Now, this is a bigger baby, but the point is, once a baby is out of the womb and laying there, how can you say that's an abortion? You can't. And so I just feel like, we always talk on the show about disillusionment. We talk about being disillusioned and being mature Christians and knowing that evil and depravity exist in this world and knowing the only answer is a savior. But you get to a place where you're kind of like, is this real? Is this what we're really arguing about? Whether or not you can kill a baby on the warming table, or in an abortion clinic, if a baby's born alive instead of aborted, if someone messes something up, which means it was a baby before it was born. I mean, we can't believe that in the birth canal, it suddenly magically becomes a baby. We know what we're doing here. We know it. The people who are advocating for it know it. The question is, which of us is going to stop it? Which of us is going to gather together and stop it? So I want to remind you that the Gosnell movie is out on DVD. Remember, we said it was coming out on the 5th. Today is the 5th. It's coming out. So y'all, get your little hot hands on that puppy. It's important. And I'm going to put the little graphic up there. Gosnell is the trial of America's biggest serial killer. The movie is changing hearts and minds on abortion. You can order your DVD now on Amazon, Best Buy, and Walmart.com. And I don't normally advertise for Amazon, Best Buy, and Walmart, but I want y'all to know where to get this. Please consider buying the DVD. I know for so many other things, if you're like us, you spend a little bit of your budget on consuming some kind of entertainment. This is worth the money. I've seen it. You're not going to be happy when you get done seeing it, but you will be acquainted with this evil, and you will be better equipped to pray if you haven't seen the movie already. And I encourage you, if you're going to watch it, watch it with your teenagers, watch it with your adult children, watch it with a friend who may be on the fence about abortion. Just pray. The Lord will lead he will direct you into who to invite over to see it with you, or to maybe give them the DVD. But watching it with them is, in my opinion, it's better, because you can then, there may be questions that you can answer. And this is heart work, because it's so hard to watch. But I watched it and I survived, and so you can do it too. I'm a total cream puff when it comes to movies. I can barely stomach anything rated R, but this movie's not rated R, so don't worry about that. Let's continue on with the phones. I want to get to y'all, and especially you've been holding on since Corey was on the show with us. Wendy, hey, thanks for calling the show today.
Yes. Hello.
Hi.
I listen to you all the time. This is the first time I've called.
Oh, thanks for calling in.
Yeah. I was just listening to your previous caller about the abortion, and I'm a lot with her as far as the after-birth abortion. After a baby is born, how is it aborted?
Yeah, it's not an abortion.
That doesn't make sense to me. It's not an abortion. It is murder. And, aborting a baby late in pregnancy, or any time in pregnancy, is murder also. It's a baby, not a fetus.
It is. And fetus is just Latin for baby. So, I used to get really offended when people would say fetus, but fetus is Latin for baby. So there's no reason for us to use the Latin when we speak English and everybody understands it. You are so right. It's a baby. We got to stop using these euphemisms and start talking the truth about this.
Yeah. I mean, I carried my second child full term, had no idea before she was born that she would be born with problems. And I have a son that was 4 when she was born. And my daughter was born with a severely small head and underdeveloped brain, and she lived for 9 months. Now, if they have done ultrasound earlier in the pregnancy, they would have probably wanted me to abort her. If they had, but I wasn't considered a high-risk pregnancy, so they did not do any ultrasound after the initial ultrasound at 3 or 4 months along, and I was fine then.
Right.
If they had measured her head later on in the pregnancy, I'm sure that they would have been shocked. So things do go wrong during pregnancy, and yes, she lived for 9 months and passed away. But I don't ever, even in losing a baby, it wasn't me that killed her. And I would have, I could not have aborted her. Not even if I knew what was wrong with her before she had been born.
Well, you got to spend 9 months with her, and then, now she's with Jesus. So it's the way it's supposed to be, and it's heartbreaking, and I'm so sorry for your loss. But your testimony here is what people need to hear. People need to understand that this is what we're called to. Life isn't perfect. We must watch too much TV to think that babies can never ever have anything wrong with them, and that everyone is supposed to have a perfect family with no one has anything wrong with them. No, not even a crooked finger or a crooked fingernail. That's just not reality. And what you're sharing is just it's what we need to hear. Thank you so much for calling and sharing that with us. Okay, we still have time because I want to get to the people who've called in. And Janet, thank you. Thank you for calling the show today.
Yes. Stacy, I've been listening to your program, first time I've called into your program, and thank you. And I want to say thank you for serving our country.
Oh, thank you.
I may get a little emotional. I just attended here recently a funeral of one of our sergeants, 75th Ranger Regiment, 2nd Battalion. He was killed in Afghanistan, and I just recently attended his funeral.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
And I got to share with some of our military men there, and also another young man. I said, "Are you part of the family?" And he said, "No, I just lost my brother." He said he was also killed. And I said, "I want to tell you something. I thank you. I thank your brother. He's passed away, of course, he got killed. But I said, I want to tell you, I'm taking a stand for the Lord in our nation, for all that your brother and this young man fought defending. And if our elected officials from across this land would understand and take serious their pledge to uphold and honor our Constitution, which the Declaration of Independence is the birth certificate of our nation. It acknowledges the unalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And the Constitution was formed to uphold those unalienable rights, to honor God and what God has given us. Our liberties come from the Lord.
That's right.
And our troops fight defending our foundation and freedom. And anyway, I just want to say life begins at the point of conception. DNA, if they want to check it out, it's there.
It's there.
Every bit of a little baby is there. It's just the maturing part. That every life is precious. I'm extremely pro-life, and where the little feet, 10 weeks in the mother's womb, actual size, I really, when they see that little pin, I'll show them. I said, that's 10 weeks. If their feet are perfectly formed at 10 weeks, the rest of them is perfectly formed as well. And at 6 weeks, the heartbeat.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, life is precious.
It is.
And we must take a stand. All across this nation, I speak. Let's take a stand for the Lord and for life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Thank you, Janet. Thank you so much. And Your emotion is dead on here. Not just because we have people dying to support and defend the Constitution of this country, and they're coming home draped under the flag, and they're literally going on to be with the Lord. These people, they've served us, and we're over here arguing about whether or not we can snuff a baby out on the table after the baby's been born. That's just ludicrous, especially when there's so many families out there who, if they knew there was a newborn baby they could get their hands on to raise as their own, they would do anything to get their hands on that baby. They want babies. So it's almost like you're there, you're trying to abort a baby, and the baby survives, and you're like, well, we're just going to leave it here to die. Why? When there's someone who'll take the baby and raise it up, and you never have to hear from the baby again. And the family will love this baby. There's so many people out there who are desperate for a newborn baby. It's just crazy that we're even arguing about this. And James in Missouri, I want to take your call, but we got to be super quick. What's your comment?
Okay. First of all, the number one cause of death in the world is not abortion. It's premeditated murder, and they disguise it by calling it abortion. And it's murder from the point of conception that God allows a soul to be in it. Mm-hmm. And it's just a heinous thing that this country is falling into, to allow this country to fall into murdering babies in any form, pre-birth or after birth. And it's going to they're going to keep pulling the line away from birth to being too old and everything else included in that. And if we could just call them puppies, maybe the animal rights activists would get involved and stop it.
Oh, you know what? Because just think about what they're now doing to people for abusing animals, and I'm against that. You shouldn't abuse animals, but how can we kill a baby but have laws on the books that you can't even abuse an animal? Things are out of whack, people. All right, if you're leaving us now, God bless. Have a fantastic afternoon. Enjoy the 32-degree weather. I know I am. After negative 24, I'm strong. And if you're sticking around, we have more news and information from onenewsnow.com at the top of the hour. So keep it here.
Family Talk.
AFA Action Alerts. When you subscribe, we'll notify you once or twice a week about a critical issue facing our country. AFA Action Alerts have been very successful in influencing legislation, as well as getting positive results from America's Fortune 500 companies. Subscribe to your AFA Action Alerts today. Go to afa.net and click on the Resources tab.
Truth, wisdom, empowerment. Urban Family Talk, a ministry of the American Family Association.
American Family News, I'm Rusty Pugh. A handful of Democrats will skip President Trump's State of the Union address, while House Speaker Nancy Pelosi is expected to be seated right behind him in the House chamber. Rachel Sutherland reports.
President Trump tweeting about border security ahead of his address tonight, suggesting using the U.S. military as a human wall. As for whether he'll declare a national emergency in an effort to give border money, White House Press Secretary Sarah Sanders would only say,
the president is 100% committed and focused on getting real border security, protecting American citizens.
Watch for the president to make his case on withdrawing troops from Iraq and Syria, as well as give an update on North Korea. In Washington, Rachel Sutherland, Fox News.
As President Trump prepares to meet again with North Korea's leader, a report says that country is moving to protect its nuclear missiles.
United Nations experts monitoring sanctions against North Korea, saying the country is dispersing locations where it assembles, stores and tests weapons in a bid to ensure they can't be destroyed by military strikes. News agency Reuters saying it's seen a confidential report from the monitors, which also labels international sanctions against North Korea as ineffective, saying the country is receiving gas and coal through illegal transfers between ships at sea. Simon Owen, Fox News.
A lawyer representing the Kentucky teenager at the center of a viral video, first purportedly to show mocking of a Native American protester, but later revealed to be not the case, is now demanding records from a number of media organizations and celebrities in what could be the start of a widespread case of libel. The attorney also produced their own video with their argument about what happened. More from Eben Brown.
The case of Covington Catholic High student Nick Sandman from Kentucky might be headed to court as his lawyer sends letters to a number of news organizations like CNN and the New York Times, as well as celebrities like Alyssa Milano, Jim Carrey, and Democratic presidential hopeful Elizabeth Warren, demanding they preserve records of their actions the days they opined on what they felt Sandman was doing in that now infamous viral video. Attorney Todd McMurdy tells Fox News he might make the same demands of even more organizations and individuals. It's possible he could file suit for defamation and libel. Eben Brown, Fox News.
A pro-life organization thinks the U.S. Supreme Court is being wise and thoughtful by taking time to consider a Louisiana law requiring abortion providers to have admitting privileges at nearby hospitals. More from Chris Woodward.
The Louisiana law requiring admitting privileges was scheduled to go into effect Monday, but Justice Sam Alito blocked the law temporarily on Friday, saying justices needed more time to review the case. In 2016, the U.S. Supreme Court struck down a similar law in Texas, but the Louisiana law dates back to 2014 and has been in legal limbo ever since. Last year, the Fifth U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals upheld the law and later denied a request by pro-abortion groups to rehear the case before all the judges on the appeals court. Benjamin Clapper of Louisiana Right to Life.
We felt that the justices must have needed more time to consider it, especially since Justices Kavanaugh and Gorsuch were not on the court the last time this issue was considered. We think it's wise that they're being thoughtful about this decision because it does have ramifications in Louisiana and beyond.
The U.S. Supreme Court is supposed to decide its next move by Thursday of this week. Meanwhile, Louisiana Right to Life is still working to protect babies and mothers.
You know, every day Louisiana loves life, and we at Louisiana Right to Life are advancing the pro-life cause by educating people about the reality of abortion, supporting mothers, helping pregnancy centers on the ground that are giving real services to mothers in need. We just had 20,000 people across 5 events in this state march for life. We are a pro-life state, and we are moving more and more in that direction.
I'm Chris Woodward.
Stocks are higher on Wall Street following strong earnings reports from a range of U.S. companies led by luxury retailers and technology companies. The encouraging earnings reports are driving the market higher, even as economic concerns continue to hang over the market. American Family News is available online at onenewsnow.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download the One News Now mobile app. I'm Rusty Pugh.
Bishop E.W. Jackson.
We really need an awakening in this country. We need for the Spirit of God to pour out of not just from heaven, but out of you and me into the hearts and lives of people. You know, you're going to have to answer to God one day for the things that you do. That's the message that people need to understand.
Tuned in to The Awakening, weekday mornings at 9 Central on Urban Family Talk. She's sharp, pointed, and insightful. This is Stacey on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
We provided Russia an ample window of time to mend its ways and for Russia to honor its commitment. Russia has refused to take any steps to return real and verifiable compliance over these 60 days. The United States will therefore suspend its obligations under the INF Treaty.
The White House says State of the Union address will be one that focuses on unity and bipartisanship. But the president on Friday did not sound like he wants to extend an olive branch to House Speaker Nancy Pelosi.
Well, he certainly will address the border wall, but also national security and border security, immigration overall. This is an address to the nation, but he's in the chamber in front of the Congress that has failed to do its job for any number of years, if not decades, on getting us an immigration plan in this country that, of course, secures our southern border.
And now, Stacey Washington.
Welcome back to the program. Thanks so much for being here today and for tuning in and just everything. Awesome. Thank you. We have a ton of content that we want to kind of work our way through. And so I want to start off with some comments from the president during his long-ranging interview that he did out of the White House. He says that Nancy Pelosi is playing games. She wants open borders and doesn't mind human trafficking. And he's so right on this. But I love to hear the president talk about this because I just don't feel like enough Americans really are informed. And I get that a lot of people are hearing some news, but I mean news directly from the president, and that when they're hearing it, they're not having the echo of every major news outlet, from those who call themselves Republicans like Joe Scarborough all the way down the line. Everyone's saying something similar, which is, well, President Trump is a liar. President Trump doesn't do, he's a Russian agent. He's not doing the things that he needs to do for the American people. He hates America, yada, yada, yada. This is the kind of stuff that people are saying on a regular basis, that stuff rolls around in your brain and it takes root. That's why you're not supposed to listen to lies, because it can get down into you and change the way you think and make you less wise. But that's what's happening to a ton of Americans, and unbeknownst to them, because they're busy doing other things. Not everyone has their primary political suit being news and information. And so if your pursuits take you in other directions and you're busy maybe working on getting an education, working in a high stress career field like science or the law or something like that, you just don't have time to watch a lot of news. What little you catch, you would think that President Trump is some kind of evil despot or dictator, and he's not. He's nowhere close to those things. He's doing a fantastic job, actually. But if I say anything nice about him, you're just in President Trump's pocket. How much is he paying you? Blah, blah, blah. Nothing. The president doesn't pay me anything. He doesn't actually even know I exist. We haven't met. So, thank you, but next. No, none of that's going on. So here he is. He's got this. We have two little clips for you where he's talking about this issue at the southern border. It's 3A.
Well, we're going to have to see what happens on February 15th. And
you're not taking it off the table.
Well, I don't take anything off the table. I don't like to take things off the table. It's that alternative. It's national emergency. It's other things. And, there have been plenty national emergencies called. And this really is an invasion of our country by human traffickers. These are people that are horrible people, bringing in women mostly, but bringing in women and children into our country, human trafficking. And we're going to have a strong border. And the only way you have a strong border is you need a physical barrier, you need a wall. And anybody that says you don't, they're just playing games.
So it is actually pretty interesting to hear the president say they're just playing games. And I understand what he's saying. I'm actually not critical of the comment, but I do think the information that we shared, and if you didn't hear the show that day, I'll just give you a brief recap right here, right now. This is so important. I think it's worth sharing and kind of digging into again. This article, which is over at Conservative Review, and I've posted it on my Facebook page, but if you're not on Facebook, just go to conservativereview.com. It's on their homepage. You have to scroll down a little bit. It's time to designate the Mexican cartels as terrorist organizations, and it's by Daniel Horowitz. Daniel Horowitz is I think he's the editor-in-chief of Conservative Review, if I'm not mistaken. And he's talking about how the drug cartels, the Mexican drug cartels, Sinaloa, Zetas, Juarez, Jalisco, Gulf, La Familia, Michoacan, Los Guerreros Unidos, and all others should all be declared foreign terrorist organizations as opposed to transnational criminal organizations. One designation, the criminal designation, allows law enforcement to operate in different ways, to coordinate between agencies, et cetera, et cetera. But the terrorism designation would allow our military to get involved in those resources, and it would allow us to actually snuff out the drug cartels as opposed to fighting them like criminal organizations. And if these guys were just laundering money, or things like that, it would be one thing. But they're smuggling human beings in and out of the country. They're selling people into slavery, and they're waging war on our Border Patrol agents and on Americans through the illicit sale of illegal drugs. This is something that has to be stopped. So when he says Democrats are playing games, sure, it's gamesmanship, but we're talking about games that are costing lives, 70,000 lives a year. The vice president said just today in a quote from him, 300 lives a week to opioid overdoses here in this country. Now that number might sound tiny. 300 people a week. There's 320 some odd million of us. give or take the illegals, you know, I mean, people are going to die of something. I've heard people say stuff like that. It's their own fault. They're addicted to drugs. What are we going to do about it? I've heard people have actually said that to me. Yeah, you can take that cavalier attitude about it unless it's your kid. If it's your dad, if it's your uncle, if it's someone you know, someone that up until they got just basically this drug puts its hooks into these people and they can't get free. It's like literally having some kind of fish hook or whatever kind of hook you can think of, only instead of it being in a fish, it's in a person. And no matter what the person does to try to get free from it, they can't get it out. That's what the drug addiction is like. Only instead of it just being the pain of the hook, it's all the family members trying, you should get that out of you. You should stop doing that. Let's take you someplace and get it out of you. And just when you think it's out, you come out of the treatment center and it's still there and you're back using the drugs again. And these transnational criminal organizations, which should be terrorist organizations, they don't care if they've made some heroin and laced it with fentanyl and the fentanyl isn't pure or it's too much fentanyl per gram of heroin. It's not like they're sitting up saying, you know, the last batch killed a bunch of people. What should we do? No, they're like, you know, that last batch sold really well, so make it the same. It's killing people. Yeah, but it's really strong and they're paying more for it. So, you know, buyer beware. You're buying illegal drugs, for goodness sakes. You should know better. That's their take on it. They're there to make money. They're there to exercise power and control. They're there to mark off their territory and sell drugs within that territory and expand that territory. That's why they don't just sell it to us. They also go into other countries and sell it. That's the Mexican drug cartels are not just selling it to us. They're in other countries, wherever there's money and disposable income and people who are bored enough or, you know, foolish enough to use drugs, they're involved there. So remember the Bible verse that we shared last week about how it is our responsibility. If you see someone about to jump off a bridge, you don't just stand there and get your cell phone out. You're supposed to go over there and try to stop them. You see someone, you know, a child running into the street, you're not supposed to just get your cell phone out and watch. You're supposed to stop them. You see someone who is being raped, you're not supposed to get your cell phone out. You're supposed to stop it. If someone is being robbed at gunpoint and you're a concealed carry member, you know what to do. You know, come on. So we have to listen to what the president is saying about the whole, you know, this is a drug cartel, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, it's a game that Nancy's playing. Yeah, but it's a game that's costing people's lives. Remember how we've talked on the show about so much we've talked about how when people don't do their jobs, other people die. And we talked about PG&E and they're not maintaining the power lines, not maintaining the area around their assets. And that's where the power lines intersected with ultra dry brush. People at the Environmental Protection Agency and the Interior Ministry of the, you know, they take care of the forests and the lands and all the basically land that's set aside for the federal government. And then when they don't do their job to burn the brush, when they listen to the environmentalists who say you can't do controlled burns, you can't clear out the underbrush, you're destroying nature. Well, if you don't tend the garden will burn. And when it burns super, super hot, then what? Right? Then what? Well, people die. And that's what's happened. So it's a game, yes, but it's a game that costs lives. And when we're talking about lives, I don't know if calling it a game is the appropriate, you know, if that's exactly the way we want to term it. So let's listen to the president. He just a little bit more here. He talks about the border issue some more, and it's 3B.
Well, I think that she was very rigid, which I would expect, but I think she is very bad for our country. She knows that you need a barrier. She knows that we need border security. She wanted to win a political point. I happen to think it's very bad politics because basically she wants open borders. She doesn't mind human trafficking, or she wouldn't do this because, you know,
she offered you over $1 billion for border security.
Excuse me?
She offered over $1 billion for border security. She doesn't want the wall.
She's costing the country hundreds of billions of dollars because what's happening is when you have a porous border and when you have drugs pouring in and when you have people dying all over the country because of people like Nancy Pelosi who don't want to give proper border security for political reasons, she's doing a terrible disservice to our country. And on the 15th, we have now set the table beautifully because everybody knows what's going on because of the shutdown. People that didn't have any idea, they didn't have a clue as to what was happening, they now know exactly what's happening. They see human trafficking. They see drugs in gangs, criminals pouring in. Now, we catch them because we're doing a great job. But if we had proper border security, we wouldn't have to work so hard, and we could do an even better job. And I think Nancy Pelosi is doing a terrible disservice to the people of our country.
And he was very presidential there because there are other terms he could have used for what Nancy Pelosi is doing. And I'll just say this to you, okay? This interviewer, she's like acting like she works on Nancy Pelosi's staff. Well, she offered you $1 billion. And what's that going to do? Remember, if the Border Patrol didn't have to spend so much time with catch and release with people who cross over the border illegally through the open parts, they could focus more on stopping the flow of drugs. They're catching just tons and tons, literal tons, not tons and tons, the euphemism, but actual tons of drugs. They're stopping them. They're confiscating them. But for every ton they catch, how much more is flowing through that they can't catch because there just aren't enough of them to patrol a 2,300-mile border with only half of it being fenced and walled, possibly. It's ridiculous that this is even a thing. So the president, he's going to talk about that tonight and so much more. I didn't mention that Gerry, Scimeca, VP of Consumer Action for a Strong Economy, he's our guest this hour. He's up next right after the messages. I want to give you the India Partners information. We're asking you to help us save boys and girls as young as 8 years old from being trafficked and sold into the red light areas of Mumbai, India. India Partners is a ministry which operates safe houses away from the red light districts of Mumbai where children of trafficked women can escape the brothel areas and be relocated. $7.08 provides 1 day of safety. $50 provides about a week of safety and rescue and care, and $100 provides about 2 weeks of safety. So no one, especially a child, should be bought, sold, or even exposed to living in the red light district. And so we ask you to call 877-616-2396, 877-616-2396, or give online, my preferred method, at afr.net. It's super fast and easy. We have wonderful volunteers who man the phones. I love those guys, but I also just like to get it done. I get to get in, get out when I do donations this way. $50 provides a week of safety. We're looking for each of our listeners to do 1 day of safety at $7.08, and we need you. We appreciate you so much, and I just love how responsive our audience is here at American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk, and I love how people in our ministry who are partnered with us are so kind-hearted and loving and love God. And so this is something that American Family Radio feels strongly about, and we're partnering with India Partners this week. I'll give you the number one more time, 877-616-2396, or go to afr.net and provide a day of safety for a child living in Mumbai, India. So, oh, perfect. Hey, I might be doing this radio thing right. Do you hear the music? I just segued on into that. When we get back, we're going to have Gerry Scimeca. He's a VP of Consumer Action for a Strong Economy. He's going to talk to us about a super important subject right here on the show. You stay there.
Here's Walker Wildman for Redeem Clean Laundry Products.
Not only do you get a great product and you get to obviously clean your clothes, get the stains out and use the multi-surface cleaner to clean your countertops and use the dryer sheets. You're doing all of this and the money's going to support the work of American Family Association.
Redeem Clean Laundry Products were developed by AFA supporters Len Ingram and Jim Duncan to assist in funding the mission of the American Family Association. Redeem Clean products work as well as or better than other products on the market. They're environmentally safe, biodegradable, and they're made right here in the United States.
The great thing about Redeem Clean is not only is the product great, but it goes to support a great cause, and that is the work of American Family Association.
For clean laundry and a cleaner society, it's Redeem Clean. Visit redeemclean.afastore.net.
This is Viewpoints with Kirby Anderson. The American Psychological Association recently identified another social problem that needs to be addressed by counselors: traditional masculinity. This new report once again illustrates that the APA is frequently driven by politics rather than science. The APA guidelines triggered an immediate online backlash. That led them to issue another statement and begin to redefine what they meant by traditional masculinity. The authors began by trotting out legitimate concerns about men who are sexually abusive or disrespectful. Here's a suggestion. Before you start throwing out terms like toxic masculinity or talk about the dangers of traditional masculinity, define your terms. Yes, some men act like bores or jerks, but most men know that boorish or obnoxious behavior is not masculinity. To its credit, the APA report opens with a sobering analysis of how badly boys and men are doing in America today. They're twice as likely to be diagnosed with ADHD. They use drugs and alcohol more than women. Men are 3.5 times more likely to commit suicide than women. We can add other social factors. A very high percentage of men are in prison. More women graduate from high school and college than men. And while women's wages have risen over the last few decades, men's wages have been static. Perhaps it is time to remind the APA that traditional masculinity helped build Western civilization and protected us from the barbarians who wanted to destroy it. Men with masculinity used to protect femininity by teaching manners to their sons and admonishing them to treat women with dignity and respect. The APA might want to survey women. I predict that few would complain that men are too masculine. Most of them will lament that men today lack masculinity. The APA has it exactly backwards. I'm Kirby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
Take Kirby and the Point of View team with you on the go with the Point of View app. Search for Point of View Radio at the Apple or Google Play stores.
You can download episodes of Stacy on the Right from the podcast page on AFR.net or UrbanFamilyTalk.com. Now, back to the show on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Welcome back to the show. Thanks for being here. Follow me on Twitter at Stacy on the Right. And now it's my pleasure to welcome our next guest to the show. It's Gerry Scimeca, VP of Consumer Action for a Strong Economy. Gerry, thanks for joining in today.
Hey, Stacy, thank you for having me.
Hey, I'm excited to talk to you about this. This is about colleges, career colleges and universities. And liberal senators are using government agencies like the IRS and VA to move against these places. What's going on here?
Yeah, and House members too. It's they're at it again, just like they want to control the internet, healthcare, energy, and the courts. The liberals are unfortunately out of power right now. They don't have the Department of Education, but that's not stopping them from going after the people they don't see as suitable to be part of the education establishment. And so they are waging attacks on various fronts against for-profit and non-profit private colleges. And these are the ones that, these are the schools that do an absolutely amazing job for adult learners, people with families, at a time when our country is facing a critical mass of need for skilled laborers and skilled workers. These are exactly the kind of schools that are filling the need. So it is a problem, and we want to highlight it, and it would be for consumers and students looking for education options. These are great choices. We think that the public schools, should do a better job of competing instead of the liberals attacking the private schools and trying to take them out of business.
So let's talk a little bit about what kind of schools you're mentioning, because a lot of people will say, well, what do you mean? I mean, when we think of colleges and universities, we primarily think of the names that have become a part of our educational lexicon. So, the Harvards, Princetons, Yales, and then, Purdue and, Alabama and Kentucky. You think of the different state schools. But those are not a problem for liberals, because those schools are already primarily, the dogma's there. They're already kind of spouting off everything liberals want. We're talking about a different kind of educational institution. What kind of college or university is this that they're attacking?
Well, exactly, Stacy. These are the schools that are filling the need that some public schools don't fill. And, you're talking about a University of Phoenix, a DeVry, a Strayer, schools that really excel at career education, that get students up and going, focusing not on folk dance or bottle making or whatever any other degree you may want to get.
Women's
I'm not
studies.
gonna knock that. If you want to get, if you want to get a PhD in modern sitcoms, that's your right. But we have a lot of people graduating from schools with hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt, student debt, with degrees that may not prepare them for the working world. And these schools really focus. They fill a void and they cater to consumers. A lot of adults, a lot of people right out of high school who have a stronger idea, know what they want to do. It could be nursing, engineering, IT, construction, the kind of jobs that really pay off. Gallup did a survey that showed that when people graduate from these schools, these career-oriented schools, their income will go up over 67%. So they're really focused on getting people into the workforce. And, we believe in consumer choice, consumer options. We believe in competition among all education opportunities. We just think it's outrageous that a handful of liberals and some phony front groups are trying to attack them and say that they are doing a terrible job, and they'll use whatever information they can. They'll grab any anecdotal, skewed statistic, and they're really very focused on denigrating these schools.
So I got to go back to something you said. So let's just say you're an adult and you're already working, or maybe you've just graduated from high school. You're still an adult, and you're looking at, $50,000, $60,000 a year room and board to go to a school outside of your state, maybe $25,000, $30,000 to go in-state to your school, maybe less than that. And you're going to have to take a lot of electives to get, your graduation done at one of the more traditional colleges, a public school. But maybe you're thinking to yourself, you know what, that DeVry University or, the American University or Strayer, they're actually, it's fewer electives. It's more actual classes in my my chosen career field, in my major. And they're talking about me getting this thing done in 3 years. I'm going to have to really bust it, and I'm going to go straight year round. I'm not taking any summers off, but I'm going to get this done in 3 years. And my boss says if I get a bachelor's, then I'm now in the management track, and I can see there's money there. More and more Americans are taking this route, and there's nothing wrong with traditional college. And many people, that's probably going to be the primary way. But I see this, what you're talking about here, the Strayers, these different schools like this, they're really taking a huge chunk out of the traditional educational model, and their graduates are killing it. They're going into business, they're going into management, they're going on to get MBAs, and they're doing things that they couldn't have done without these universities being in existence.
Absolutely. That's exactly the point. I went to a traditional school, and I had freshman year, it's still kind of funny to me, but I had a gym requirement. I actually could not get my college degree until I passed 2 semesters of gym. I don't recall any interview where someone asked me how my handball was doing. So, one of the advantages these schools have is that, you're exactly right, they graduate people sooner, under a year less. Undergraduates can take up to, on average, over 6 years to graduate from a traditional public university, whereas it's around 4 for these private schools. And, if you're interested in a specific career, these schools are great at getting the faculty, the people that are actually working in these industries. If you want to get a degree in petroleum engineering, one of these schools could get you an engineer that's actually working in the field now and teach you, the latest technologies and what's actually going on in the industry. At a public school, you might be stuck with a 75-year-old tenured professor who, is still mad about the ExxonMobil merger. So
right.
They really do cater to students and give them the opportunities they're looking for.
So full disclosure here, I have some of my family members who graduated from some of the universities that you named off when you first started talking. And I can attest, Scout's honor, although I'm not a scout, just using that phraseology so you know, the potential for improvement in your career trajectory is unlimited. And so what I was told, especially when one of my families, when they were thinking about doing this, I was talking to a friend who graduated from a big state school, one of the Big 10 state schools. And of course, years and years ago, and she was a little older than I was, and she was saying, well, the thing is, if you graduate from one of these kind of for-profit, I'm flubbing that, for-profit universities, what happens is you need to get a master's from a traditional university or people aren't going to take that degree seriously. And I remember coming, back home and calling my family members saying, well, my friend says that these universities aren't taken seriously when it comes to jobs. And my family member said, yeah, your friend doesn't work in the industry that I'm in, where half of my coworkers went back to school to get either undergrad or graduate degrees from Strayer and 2 other universities she named off. And she said these places are respected in the industry because the graduates from there already have work experience. They're just getting the degree to kind of undergird that. She said they're getting promoted like crazy. That's why I'm going, because I want to get promoted too. And I couldn't believe it right afterwards. Literally, she graduated. We flew there, celebrated with her. She got a promotion 3 months later, and now I can't even estimate how much more money she makes because she's so much higher along than she was. And she got a undergrad in it's the computer sciences. I can't remember specifically what it was, but I know it's in the computer science area. You're right about this, and I think it's like an untold secret for people.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. These schools are very much catered to career-oriented, to putting people into the jobs they're looking for. And the most important thing really is just that for consumers and students and potential students, that we remain a broad choice, that all the choices are out there. We shouldn't, the politicians trying to, run some of these schools out of business because they don't meet their ideological criteria is outrageous. It's very hurtful for students. It's very hurtful for the economy. It is just an ideologically driven agenda that serves absolutely nobody. And the deceit they're putting forward in order to denigrate these schools is pretty outrageous. But people would lose opportunities, especially less privileged people. These schools are a great value. They're very convenient. You can do online learning, and you get very, very much hands-on experience that sometimes you can't get at a private school. So, we believe in education opportunity for everybody, and that should be, all of the above. Your school should not be picked out by Elizabeth Warren or Senator Durbin. You should have the right to choose whatever school is right for you.
So, Gerry, let's unpack this a little further. When you say the educational choice, I guess the first thing that comes to mind for me is that we keep seeing these studies and statistics out there about how many Americans are prepared to go into the STEM fields. And they're saying, we just don't have enough Americans graduating in these fields to fill these jobs. We need people to come from overseas. Isn't what the Democrats are doing by attacking these universities actually exacerbating that problem? It basically says, go to these traditional schools and take up clay modeling for a major, while we import people from India and Pakistan and places like that who actually have degrees in science, and they're going to come here on visas and do these, because these jobs pay a lot, $80,000, $90,000, $100,000 a year, and Americans can't do them because they don't have the degree in the proper field.
Yeah, you're absolutely nailing exactly how the Democrats are talking out of both sides here. On the one hand, they say that, anytime Republicans in the White House, they'll say that if there's job creation, these are cheap jobs, these aren't good jobs, they don't pay well, and that's not actually been true with this economy so far. But right now, we do have about $5 to $6 million $5 or 6 million people short of having a fully skilled labor force. And these are exactly the kind of degrees, this is the kind of education that would fill this need. This is what people are looking for. It's what employers are looking for. So, right, we definitely need more skilled workers. And when you have a pipeline to schools that offer the experience and training that will get these people good jobs, then it's absolutely outrageous that they are in a war employing the IRS and the Veterans Administration to try to shut them down.
Okay, so I'm sure people are listening and they're thinking, okay, what exactly, which schools? So could you name off a few of the schools? And then could you also talk a little bit about, I know for me, I sometimes talk on the show about us as parents. We can kind of direct our kids. It's not like you're picking for them, but you can kind of direct them into science, technology, engineering, and math type career fields by encouraging them to take tougher math classes, encouraging them to take science classes. When they're offered an elective in gym and they don't need it, instead they can take that intro to engineering class in high school just to try it. It doesn't mean it's your major. You just try it and see if they like it. If more American parents did that, wouldn't we see more of our kids, filling that huge gap? That's 5 to 6 million people. That's a lot of people. That's the population of the state of Missouri.
It really is. And, you know, if somebody doesn't go to a great high school, I mean, I have friends today. I know my high school was hit or miss in some areas, and I've seen them years later, and they're doing amazing things. They're working in engineering or aeronautics. And I was thinking, I don't remember you being a math genius back in high school. So you get the one crack at it, and, you know, if you don't excel, then you might lose your opportunity. These schools offer a great, a chance to, you develop, you mature a little bit, you let your skills flourish. And I think that's something that, you know, higher education does in general, is gives people a chance to mature and give them, a place to really find their calling. And, you know, it's really all schools that, I mentioned a few before, like, you know, University of Phoenix is very well known, and Strayer, DeVry, and you've seen these schools are pretty well known, but there's a lot of others. And, they're in our communities, they're online, and they offer, great chances for people to get these skills. And, you know, whereas otherwise you may have been told when you were younger you're no good at math, but you can try some classes at the local technical school, or it might be online, and find out you have a talent for it. So absolutely, it's in all our best interest for education to be spread wide and far, and for people to make decisions. We think consumers are smart. We don't think they should have their decisions made for them. So we believe they're smart. They can look at all the opportunities out there, pick the one that's best for them, give it a shot. And education opportunity is really what we're trying to protect.
And Gerry, I just want to echo what you've said there. I hope if you're listening to this, or maybe you're thinking, wow, maybe I should let my teenager listen to this, or maybe I should let my 19 or 20-year-old young adult listen to this because they're working and they're not satisfied. But now that they've gotten some work history under their belt, they really might be more motivated to go to school. We're talking about for families that don't have the means to shell out $55,000 a year, and you don't want to take on student loans. Your child can continue to live at home and work part-time and go to school at one of these universities and come out with that degree and get a really good professional job and not have $200,000 in student loan debt. They might have some, but not nearly the amount they would have if they were borrowing for room and board, et cetera, et cetera. So this is literally the American dream, where we create our own destiny here by creating things. When we see a need, some American wakes up in the middle of the night and says, I got it. And they create the answer to it, which is what these schools are. They're the answer to families who can't afford the other options.
Absolutely. It's worked for millions of people already.
We've got to get people to kind of consider it. I think what most people are doing is they're looking around and they're going, we can't afford that school, and we're not willing to take on this debt, and so that must mean we just got to get out in the workforce. Nope, there's one other option, and it's these schools.
Yeah, there's no one-size-fits-all category. Unfortunately, like you see with health plans, what they do with Obamacare, and almost anything that the Democrats try to restrict our choices, this is one size does not fit all in education either. And these options are very important both for the workforce and for the economy, and just for individual opportunity, which we really need to protect.
Gerry Scimeca, VP of Consumer Action for a Strong Economy, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Stacey. Really appreciate it.
Talk to you again soon. Oh, so good to talk to him. It's a subject, as you can tell, I'm really fired up about it. And I hope that you'll share this podcast. You can find it at afr.net with someone who might need this information, because the opportunities are out there. All right, we'll be back with more right after this. This is Just a Minute with Stacey Washington. Christians, where are you? New York State's legislature just passed a bill making all forms of abortion legal up to birth by doctors and non-doctors. The bloodthirsty death worshippers then went on to light up the World Trade Center in pink to celebrate. Meanwhile, Planned Parenthood's annual report shows the abortion giant doing 11,000 more abortions than the prior reporting year and performing fewer women's health care screenings, all while turning a multi-million-dollar profit. In the natural, it looks as if taxpayer-funded abortion is here to stay. But what does God's word say? If my people, which are called by my name, shall humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then I will hear from heaven and will forgive their sin and will heal their land. America needs our prayers. Christians, the Bible is talking to you. I'm Stacey Washington. Find out more at stacyontheright.com.
Equipped with Chris Brooks.
This program is an apologetic endeavor. What I want to do is really train you in the art and science of defending and commending your Christian faith to people who maybe they've been hurt by the church, maybe they don't believe like you believe, and you're saying to yourself, how do I have an effective conversation with them? Well, we're looking for an evangelistic edge, if you will, that will allow us to more effectively, more contextualize the gospel so that we can reach men and women for Christ. Quite often, the on-ramp, if you will, is looking at culture and taking advantage of the conversations that folks are already having and saying, how can I leverage this to get people to talk about Jesus? This show becomes kind of massively significant to you if your desire is to reach people for Christ.
Get equipped with Chris Brooks.
Join me Monday through Friday at noon Central Time on Urban Family Talk.
Fox on Tech. Alphabet, Google's parent company, is exploring the health technology space with their life sciences division, Verily. Verily is reportedly working on a health tracking shoe that will measure movement, weights, even have the ability to detect falls. Right now, the rumors suggest the shoe is a prototype, and Verily would need a partner to build and market the shoes. Technology is finding a home in healthcare. A shoe that could detect a fall could easily be linked to other devices to alert emergency officials or nearby neighbors or family. The ability to track movement and weight could also be useful for folks trying to lose weight and get in shape. Apple also added fall detection to the newest version of its Apple Watch, which, if detected, does contact emergency officials. The Apple Watch also has the ability to detect some forms of atrial fibrillation and has been credited with alerting users to life-threatening health issues. Verily was known as Google Life Sciences until 2015, when it became a separate company under parent company Alphabet. With Fox on Tech, I'm Brett Larson, Fox News.
This is Stacey on the Right with Stacey Washington on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
For years, Russia has violated the terms of the Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces Treaty without remorse. To this day, Russia remains in material breach of its treaty obligations not to produce, possess, or flight test a ground-launched intermediate-range cruise missile system with a range between 500 and 5,500 kilometers. In spite of this violation, for almost 6 years, the United States has gone to tremendous lengths to preserve this agreement and to ensure security for our people, our allies, and our partners. We have raised Russia's noncompliance with Russian officials, including at the highest levels of government, more than 30 times. Yet Russia continues to deny that its missile system is noncompliant and violates the treaty. Russia's violation puts millions of Europeans and Americans at greater risk. It aims to put the United States at a military disadvantage, and it undercuts the chances of moving our bilateral relationship in a better direction. It's our duty to respond appropriately. When an agreement is so brazenly disregarded and our security is so openly threatened, we must respond. We did that last December when the United States, with strong support from all of our NATO allies, formally declared Russia in material breach of the treaty.
That was Secretary of State Pompeo, and he's talking about this intermediate range nuclear forces treaty. And it's been in effect for all of these decades, and America has really been on the short end of the stick there because the Russians have been, as is the case with a lot of these treaties and no-fly zones and things that we do with these foreign countries, they're just like, you know what, we're not going to exactly pay attention to what this thing says. We're going to kind of still do what we do, which is we're going to have some extra missiles over here. We're going to test these kind of missiles over there, and we're going to have a little bit more missiles than we're allowed to under the treaty, and what are you going to do about it? Sweater vests wearer or Democrat who we can buy off with a couple of $500,000 speeches. And they've been able to get away with this. And now you got President Trump, who honestly, he just lays out everything. And he says, this is on the table now. I don't like it. And that is why I have been I've just been impressed by his candor, by him saying, you know what, this is a garbage treaty. This is a garbage treaty. That's what he's saying. He looks at it and he says, you know what, if I'm reading this right, do they abide by this? And everybody in the room says, no, President Trump, they don't abide by it. then why are we abiding by it? It's not a treaty if half the people in it aren't participating. And it's not a treaty if other nations that are really important in the space aren't also a part of it. If it's a treaty and only one person is abiding by it and the other person's not, and the other parties that need to be in it aren't even at the table, then it's really just a clamp on us. You can't do this, you can't do that, which serves the liberal agenda because they're the ones who are like, we don't need missiles like that. We don't need, I can't tell you how many times I've had a liberal, this is how they think. Well, you don't need guns. How do you know what I need? Tell me how many times you've actually been attacked. I'm like, well, why do I have to discuss it with you? Like, I don't even know you. You could be a criminal yourself. We just met. Why should I tell you if I've ever been attacked or if I have security issues? Why should I discuss it with you instead of just lawfully obtaining methods to protect myself? Why do you have to even be involved? And that's the way they are about our national security as well. Well, why do we need that many missiles? Why do you need to be in the conversation? You're dumber than two rocks sitting next to each other. Why do you get to discuss this? And that's what we have to start asking these people. Thomas Sowell, actually, he says there are 3 questions you should ask every time a liberal proposes a policy. The questions are, compared to what? At what cost? And what hard evidence do you have to support what you're saying? Not your feelings, not your emotions, but hard evidence. When you look at it like that, all of a sudden, when you listen to it like that, when you think about it like that, all of a sudden, a lot of the things that the liberals are advocating for they don't hold water. So now I want to listen to this a little bit of audio. This is great stuff. It's Senator Richard Shelby. He's talking about the testimony from border experts that could get us off of politics and onto substance. And this is where we need to go with this thing. What solutions need to be implemented? How much do they cost? And the total amount that needs to be approved by Congress is what? And then how long it will take to get it implemented? And what other things would you request? Department of Homeland Security, U.S. Customs, Border Patrol, et cetera, ICE, Immigration Customs Enforcement. What is on your wish list of things to have to secure the border, to protect people who are, vulnerable populations who are being smuggled, to protect people from being caught up in the drug cartels? What do you need? You see what I'm saying? So it's not just about sealing off the border and devil may care. It's about all sides really having input and having a serious discussion that leads to solutions instead of just gridlock, which is what we're seeing now. It's number one.
I think that the president is dead set on keeping his campaign promise. I support border security, a wall, a fence, a barrier, whatever it takes. I also support enhanced procedures, technology, and more manpower. We got to have a comprehensive approach to this. I believe that we've got a chance this week to move things. Will we? We don't know. The president could be right. We could be wasting our time. On the other hand, we could come up to a solution. But as long, Jake, as long as the speaker and the president are way at odds, the chances of us reaching an agreement are slim, but it could happen. As a matter of fact, later this week, coming up, we've asked the professionals, the people who do the work, that know something about the border, know what they need. Do they need a wall? They need a fence? They need more technology? Do they need it all? We're going to have them up before the Appropriation Conference Committee, and we're going to find out what they want. I think it's not what I need or what the Speaker needs or even the President needs. It's what we need to secure our borders. And if we get this information from the experts, it could move us off the dime.
So then, and of course, the operative thing here is for him is he's operating in good faith. He's saying, if we hear from them what they need, then what do we do? I think they move forward with some solutions. I love, in some ways, that it is so hard to get things done in Washington, D.C., because so much of what they do, the unintended consequences, end up having negative ramifications for Americans. But on the other hand, for something like this, which is clearly within their constitutional mandate, and they are required to do this, there has to be a mechanism by which people who want to stop America from being safe can be sidestepped. You know, in the private sector, if you had a company that was trying to do some things to fix a problem and you had a bunch of people who were trying to stop it and they didn't care one way or the other whether or not the problem was solved, that person would be fired. Those people would be removed from the board. They'd be voted off. They would be that contractor would have their contract canceled, and others would be brought in who could actually get the job done. This is the government, and it's kind of the beauty of the government, but it's also the downfall, because we're talking about dead Americans. The consequence of doing nothing for the solutions that we need at the border is more Americans dying because we haven't done anything. Here he is. He rounds out his comments. It's Senator Shelby, too.
I think we've got to listen to the experts. We've got to listen to the people who do it every day, that know what the challenge is. Because we do, Jake, we do have problems with our borders. We have not secured our borders. The president's absolutely right there. It's a question, how do we get off the politics and to the substance? If we can do that, we'll get the job done.
So getting off of the politics and onto the substance. And I think we're going to hear an echo of that tonight on the State of the Union. You know, it's important. I would say something else, but what I will do is, rather than going off into a semi-tangent, I had someone ask me if we would discuss Senator Cory Booker's comments. He's back at it again, attacking someone for their faith, asking them if they believe that homosexual marriage or gay marriage is a sin. Now, let me set the stage for you. This is a confirmation hearing. D.C. Circuit Court nominee Naomi Rao is a Republican, and she has been nominated to the D.C. Circuit Court. You got Senator Cory Booker of New Jersey, Democrat, asked her some questions about her beliefs on sin during her Senate confirmation hearing earlier today. He took issue with an article she wrote years ago about Lawrence v. Texas, which is a Supreme Court decision that struck down sodomy laws. He asked her about her views on gay relationships. Now remember, everybody up until just a few weeks ago, everybody thought Senator Cory Booker was a homosexual. Now he's been touting past girlfriends, and he says he's a heterosexual. But whenever someone is up for a nomination to a judicial nomination, court, anything, the first thing he does is starts asking them what they think about gay sex. This is where he goes every single time. He loses his temper, he gets crazy eyes, and he starts yelling and gesturing wildly. So here's what he said. Are gay relationships, in your opinion, immoral? Senator, I'm not sure the relevance of that too. She starts to respond. He says, I think it's relevant to your opinion if you think African-American relationships are immoral. Do you think that gay relationships are immoral? I do not. Do you believe they are a sin? Senator, my personal views on any of these things are things I would put to one side. So you're not saying here whether you believe it's sinful for two men to be married. You're not willing to comment on that? She said, Senator, no. He said, excuse me, I didn't hear your response. She said, my answer is that these personal views are ones that I would put to one side. Whatever my personal views are on the subject, I would faithfully follow the precedents of the Supreme Court. Now, I've heard this argument put forward before by a number of conservatives who've been questioned in this way when they go up for these appointments. I don't like that they say, I will put my personal views to one side. What I think they should say is, my personal views are constitutionally protected, and as I have done previous to this point, I will continue to uphold the law of the land until such time as that law has been properly, legislatively changed. And then at that point, I will uphold that law. I will render unto Caesar that which is Caesar's, but my personal views will remain my personal views. And if you'd like to know what they are, I'll tell you, but that cannot be a means by which you would unconstitutionally prevent me from accepting an offer of a position in the U.S. government because the Constitution protects my personal views. That's what I want to hear one of these people say. It's the truth. Why do they continue to sit there and meekly say they're going to put their views to one side? They're not putting their views to the side. They're upholding the law. The views remain the same. Just the same as he believes in same-sex marriage, she believes that it's not same-sex marriage, that marriage can only be between a man and a woman. What did he do when the law wasn't on his side? He advocated for what he believed in. She is going to uphold the law and advocate for what she believes in. I think the reason we lose these battles is because we look as if we don't really believe what we believe. Now, you might say, well, if she says that, then there's no way she's getting confirmed. I don't think so. First of all, that's not exactly how God works, is it? Does God say to his people, make sure and sound as if you're not sure if you believe that my word is true and that I'm here and I'm real? Or does he say, boldly go forth and declare the truth and the gospel, and it will set you free? It will set the captives free. And does he not say he will go before us? When you're in God's will, he goes before you. Go into the Old Testament and look at how many times David prayed to God, shall I go after this one or that one? Shall I go and take back what they've stolen? Shall we go and destroy them? Do we go into battle with these ones or that ones? You hear what I'm saying? And each time God was like, yep, go. I've already delivered them into your hand. Or no, stay where you are. It's not yet time. Most of the time he told David, so much so that David couldn't build the temple. One of David's descendants had to build the temple because God said, you shed too much blood for you to be the one to build the temple. You're a warrior. That's not your job. I've just given too many of these folk, into your hand, as you asked me to do. Okay, so do we not still live with this? We serve the same God. We serve the same God. So, when he says no, when the door gets slammed shut in your face so hard your nose is a little bit smushed or your toes got stomped, you can choose to be downtrodden about it and just, wailing and moaning, or you can say, uh-oh, this is not the direction God has for me to go, and I'm gonna hold back and wait for the next go. Whatever the case is, I would answer that these personal views are ones that I would put to one side whenever my personal views are on the subject. That mealy-mouthed garbage isn't going to win anything for us. You go forward in courage for what God has asked you to do, and he will give the enemy into your hand. Whether it's a political enemy or an enemy of any type, ask him, did he say go? If he said go, go get it. Stop being mealy-mouthed about it. I wish I could talk to this lady for a few minutes. Anyway. God bless you from the Heartland, citizens. Thank you for making your home at American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk. Back with you tomorrow. See you online after the State of the Union.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast do not necessarily reflect those of Urban Family Talk, Urban Family Communications, or American Family